by 5.
Drei Gläser.
2. That's no moon.
What's up, everybody? We are live. It is episode 29 of the Hardcore Casual Podcast. He is Jay of F1 Podcast fame. I am Mason of Radio Infamy, and we are the conversation at the table behind you. And it is allergy season here in the south of the U.S., so please bear with us. I am locked. I am loaded. we're trying to make do here, man.
I have never had allergies. I've been fortunate in that regard. There are other places that I've been absolutely cursed in, but allergies is not one of them. So I'm very thankful for that.
Whenever I was a kid,
and I feel bad for you guys that are, because it can be debilitating sometimes, or not crazy debilitating, but I know it can fuck your day up pretty good.
I mean, whenever I was a kid, I had no problems running around on the ranch, no issues, just running around like a hummingbird, no problem. And then towards middle, like didn't even know what allergies were. Heard about them, never knew what they were. Hit middle school, had a little sniffle. High school, started to get it, and then it's just gotten worse from there. To the point that the first like 2 months of this show was me basically coughing and hacking throughout most, struggling for the mute button throughout most of the shows. But. Oh, wow. Excuse me. There you go again. I do want to start off this episode with an apology, and that is to our listeners, our viewers. I just wanted to apologize. I know that we have not, like usually we do the show and then I edit at least a segment or two and get that released on the as a feature on the channel, and I have not done that in a couple of weeks. I've been very busy, a lot going on. All good things, and don't need to talk about them right now because they might not happen. But if they do, I will certainly let you guys know, and I think it'll be very apparent as well very quickly if everything works out.
Well, yeah.
but it's so sorry about that. I'm going to try to do that today, and we've got some good stuff today. I think we've got some good fun news items to talk about today, so we should have no issues in that area. Before we dive into it, though, got anything going on, Jay? Any particular?
Well, I'm gonna save my stuff for kind of the tail end. I've been in a downward, not downward spiral. I feel like it's an upward spiral into some old school gaming and television watching, and
fogey,
doing a little retro. As you can see, I recently purchased the NCC 1701 Enterprise circa 1960.
Looks great.
I don't know what Adam Sandler movie we got playing on the view screen back there, but I got to figure that out. But other than that, yeah, I'll save my stuff for the end. We'll have some fun with that. But I know you've got some juicy news that you and I kind of texted back and forth about when it hit. So go for it, man.
Yeah, let you guys know we're gonna be covering a few things here. So we're gonna cover some Kojima news. We're gonna be covering some Bungie news. We're gonna be covering some news on The Expanse, on what's the Squadron 42? What's the Star Citizen? 42. Gonna be talking about Star Citizen, some Outer Worlds 2, all kinds of stuff like that, as well as some other things, talking about some retro stuff, some things out of Jay's bag. But to start off with, where would we be without our anchor being Randall Pitchford?
You probably would have gave me congestive heart failure if you'd have played that meme. It is so loud.
Yes.
No.
I know it's here somewhere. Here we go. All I'm saying is that Randy Pitchford is our anchor bean, okay? There we are. So we can talk about Randy. So one of the things that we have advised for months at this point now for Randy is to just stop tweeting. Get off Twitter. Don't worry about it. Just quit. Just let the game speak for itself. And to his credit, he wasn't on Twitter. So there was that. However, he still left himself open for interviews. Not with us. Not with us.
Not
Even
with us,
though,
Randy.
yeah,
What's
even
going on,
though
Randy?
I've made multiple requests, but he did talk to some people, and to those people, he gave some hot takes. Now, granted, these aren't as bad as his generational run of bad PR that he was on earlier in the summer.
Bro, I got to tell you that I felt these were bad. Maybe not
They weren't
bad
good.
in the
They weren't
strictest sense
good.
of bad, but they were bad.
They're not so bad that he's going to have to release a poorly received apology or anything like that, but they're not great. So we'll start with the biggest hit from the most recent spate of them. And here we go. So as the headline says, Gearbox boss Randy Pitchford says, I think they could charge $200 for Borderlands 4. You can't find a better value in the world for any type of entertainment. And then adds, I wish they'd give it away because then everyone would play it. So this is obviously a bit of a Frankenstein's monster of various quotes of his. So we can
I'm
put
pretty
those
sure there's a catch-22 wrapped inside of a catch-22, wrapped in a conundrum in here, because he literally said, I think you could charge $200, and then said, I wish they'd give it away.
Yeah,
So.
he's definitely trying to tie himself in a bit of a logic pretzel here. But so Games Radar spoke to him, and these are I'll kind of read we'll talk about. I'll read through it and then we'll talk about it. So this is the way it kind of came out. So whenever they brought up Borderlands and the cost and the value for money, he said, "Shit, I think they could charge $200, but I wish they'd give it away because everyone would play it. That's just not how business works. But the value is there." So there's that. He said that, again, I wish he'd just stay away from the price altogether. But he proposes that they could charge. Obviously, this is not saying that they can, will, or should, but he said they could, and the value would still be there. So that's him trying to have confidence in his game, and I appreciate that about him. Appreciate his confidence in his game, but there's probably better ways to articulate it, given that the hubbub that we had over the summer primarily revolved around will it or will it not be $80, and here he is just throwing out $200 just for the hell of it.
If this was, your everyday workspace, this is why social media is bad, because everybody is looking, whether they say it or not, they're looking for something that's going to trigger them so they can go nuts and get clicks. But if this was Randy and you and me and a couple of our other friends on the smoke dock at work during a break, and he's like, shit, man, they could charge $200 for this shit, we'd all be like, yeah, man, they totally could do that. He's like, I wish they'd kind of just give it away because, we'd all play it. Yeah. And it would just be a break time conversation and no harm, no foul. But because he puts it on social media and because there's no place, he literally can't defend himself in a way because he's already wrote it and sent it out. Somebody else reads it the day later and they're like, oh, well, hell no.
Technically, in his defense, this was not put out on social media by him. This was him in an interview who then chopped it up and sent it out on social media.
Still, you can't convey the things he wants to convey. But my point is, in the day and age when most of our conversations were face-to-face, those would have been perfectly acceptable things that he could have said and not got in trouble.
Yeah, and then he goes on to elaborate. So they kind of brought on the discussions about the $70 games, $80 games, all that whole thing. And he said that he's confident that basically those conversations honestly don't matter in the big picture. The sum of every conversation that ever happened on social media about the price of a video game and every article that was ever written in Truth, you add all that up and it won't change anything with the result. Okay. At the end of the day, when I want something and I feel like what they're asking is fair, I'll get it. If I don't want something, I won't. Or if I think what they're asking of me isn't fair, I'm not going to do it. All the talk doesn't matter. At the end of the day, that's what it is. The truth is, when you talk about Borderlands, and then I love this because it says, the truth is, when you talk about Borderlands, the quote stops and it says, Pitchford tells us, trailing off a bit. And then I guess he comes back to and says, like, I don't know, how can I say this and sound as if I have any amount of humility? Borderlands 4 is amazing. It's absolutely an incredible game, and the value is undeniable. So I get what he's saying there. The thing where he's like, well, if I want something and I think what they're asking is fair, I'll get it. If I don't want something, I won't get it. Or if I want something, but what they're asking for, I don't think is a fair price for it, I won't get it. And that's just what it is. True, but that's kind of the crux of the whole point, is that everybody was loudly saying at $80, we don't consider that fair. And while sure, there would be some people that would buy it, there would be a large number of people that wouldn't. I mean, case in point, I do believe, like we've talked about before, one of the games that we're going to be talking about later, The Outer Worlds 2, that's the only game outside of Nintendo where there was any data regarding an $80 price tag. So, Nintendo did their thing, and that's Nintendo numbers, and their numbers are kind of separate from everything else. But Xbox had Outer Worlds 2 up for pre-order for $80. And that was the only thing that we could go off of. We had the heated debate online and all the social media hubbub, and then we had the pre-order numbers for The Outer Worlds 2. Now, we couldn't see those numbers, but Xbox could, and we know that Xbox backpedaled hard. So I think, yeah, that's the whole point, is that we don't feel like $80 is a fair ask for what we're getting. That just doesn't justify it. So it still feels in this bit that he's just not learned much of anything. Like he summarized the entire argument with that there, but he wasn't making a point against the debate. That was the entire point of the debate, was
Right.
Is that a fair number? So I don't know. That's before we move on to some other Randy-isms. Do you have anything else to talk about his takes on price?
No, but this is what I do have. We're super close to the release date.
Mhm.
And if I'm the PR people there, the spin department, I'd come into his office one morning with a first class ticket and go, hey, it's the first class ticket for you and your family to go to Tahiti until the day after the release.
It's either that or they just
we don't want to hear for you. No phone.
Yeah, it's like they just need to go in there. If he doesn't take the if he doesn't take the carrot, then you got to go hard. Shut the Wi-Fi off to his office. Go in there, grab his phone, lock it from the outside, and leave him there. Just feed him some peanut butter sandwiches through the mail slot until the game releases, and that's it.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
give him a bucket. So that was the first. So that's probably the most inflammatory of the things that he had to say, where it's like, again, I see where he's coming from, but he just has a way of putting it in the worst conceivable way of ever making a point. To which end, we have this, though. This one's actually not too bad. Gearbox boss Randy Pitchford admits Borderlands has gone too far in the past, but promises Borderlands 4 has hit the sweet spot. So this one's actually not a bad or infuriating quote. It's actually kind of reassuring. And basically, it boils down. Of course, they stretched an entire article out of this, but basically, the quote was that with each game, and this is Randy Pitchford again saying this, with each game we push boundaries and we see, and we can see those times we've gone too far. Sometimes it's in the game. Let me just start over. With each game, we push boundaries and we can see those times we've gone too far. Sometimes it's in a game mechanic, and sometimes it's in a story decision or a tone decision. And these have all been complaints. People have been frustrated by sometimes the lack of game mechanics, like the lack of, something like we have now where we have the bike that you can just kind of like pop up out of nowhere instead of having to find the catch a ride, outlets or whatever to kind of like materialize a vehicle or something like that. We've also all had issues with the story in the past where, the first two were great, and then we kind of started to go downhill. And then the most recent release, Borderlands 3, the story was virtually non-existent. It was sort of pared down to just a cutscene that you would get every time you jump from one planet to another. And that was really about it.
Yeah, not to mention it felt like every planet had its own story going on.
Yeah,
and
which I'm fine with having like side stories and that kind of thing. I don't mind that
if they connect.
Yeah, but it's just like that main story with the twins and all this stuff. It just never took off. It never gripped. And again, the other thing they said there was the tone. So that was another thing that we've mentioned multiple times is the tone of Borderlands and how, 1 and 2, like they had that tone nailed. It was irreverent. It was funny. It was a bit childish, but it was childish in sort of like a lovable way and immature. And then it just really leaned way too heavy into it. And it just became like playing the game with Jackass playing as the soundtrack to it.
Yeah.
And it just became too much. So I'm glad that these are all things that they have noticed, that they have heard the complaints, and that as far as we know, seem to be points that they are addressing in this. They've talked about addressing it, and we've gotten some positive feedback from people that have gone hands-on. So I'm actually happy about this. So the first quote was typical Randy, poor form, but this one just sort of reiterates the things that we had already been hearing, and that they're kind of honing back in on the things that we loved, and they're expanding game mechanics in a way that should prove to be beneficial for gameplay and give us some value there. And as far as story and tone, getting to a place where we can be a lot more happy with it and not feel so just so immature while playing it.
Right.
All right. And the last bit that I have for Randy is here. So it just says exclusive. Randy Pitchford admits he's a little nervous about the more challenging parts of Borderlands 4. And really all this is, it basically just says that Borderlands 4 is going to be leaning a bit more into the RPG side of Borderlands in some aspects. And now this has always been an aspect of Borderlands 4, or sorry, an aspect of the Borderlands series. Like whenever you would go somewhere and you would have the skull over the enemies, their name, it would have like the skull and crossbones or something like that, letting you know that they're too high level, to do something there right now. But they're apparently like leaning more heavily into this, where it doesn't scale to your level. There will be things where it's going to have a particular level. You'll go there and you're going to face an enemy, and if an enemy's too difficult, you can go away, do something else, level up, and come back, and it should be much easier. So they're leaning more into that RPG side of things. So basically the quote that Randy gives is, we have lots of players that actually aren't interested in deep, hard challenges. Lots of people that love just exploring the Borderlands or spending time with the characters. I'm a little nervous because there are points of Borderlands 4 that are more challenging. But one of the coolest things about Borderlands 4, because of the nature of the RPG, is if anything is a little challenging for you, you can just grind somewhere and level up and become more powerful. You will find that things that were hard when you were a little chump will become trivial when you become a badass. But we definitely have pushed the challenges quite a lot, especially with bosses and boss fight mechanics. So not only does it talk about the RPG level sort of thing, and it's not really scaling, you can level up, but also I do like that you mentioned boss mechanics, so that we can have things where this was something that people had kind of touched on here and there, people that had gone hands-on, where a lot of the Borderlands stuff, the bosses were just bullet sponges, and that was the difficult thing. They were bullet sponges, and they had big, powerful weapons. Yeah.
Instead of actually having a gimmick, like, okay, this guy's weak from behind, but he also spins really fast, so you got to be able to get behind him to hit him, but he spins really fast.
Exactly. Like there wasn't a lot of strategy other than, hey, don't get hit by this guy's flamethrower and then just shoot him a lot. Yeah, so we're actually going to have some boss mechanics, which I'm actually looking forward to kind of having some strategy involved.
This is why I love Borderlands 1 and explicitly loved the DLC, The Secret Army of General Knox. I thought that was one of the best put together DLCs of all time, because every single non-baseline enemy you fought had some kind of gimmick you needed to learn. Yeah, everybody's calling them mechanics, but let's be clear, they're gimmicks. So, you had to learn that gimmick, and you're like, and there was always that one gimmick that was your kryptonite, and you're like, shit, these guys again, until you got to the end, and you had Chromerax, and those were great things. And I did love too. felt like 2, even though it didn't happen, I felt like 2 was the beginning of us going wheels off the truck with the tone towards the end of 2. And I love 2, but yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm again. Randy is the worst messenger to send out there.
Yeah.
I wish just wear your multicolored suit and just do the here's your card stuff, man. Is this your card? Is this whatever? Just stop. Just get off the trail.
Just give shift codes and
exactly
take it easy, man.
Exactly.
Float around in your pool.
Yeah, play your guitar. Yeah, do whatever.
Yeah.
Just stop. Or come talk to us. But anyways, yeah, just take it easy. But overall, it was like I said. He didn't say anything that he's going to have to apologize for. I think anytime they ask him about price, that seems to be the big one. Anytime he's asked about price, he just seems to be completely incapable of articulating his opinion on price and value without just absolutely putting his foot in his mouth.
It's like we said, man. He fell on the sword for the price thing, and now he's the point person on game pricing.
One might say he's our anchor bean.
And I mean, I'm sure he didn't intend it that way, or he wouldn't have done it. Well, maybe he would have done it, but still. And now we'll
never know. We'll never know.
Everybody's got to get out of jail free card. All the other developers got to get out of jail free cards. They don't have to. Oh, you talk to Randy about price. We'll talk to you about our game.
Yep, Randy took the heat for everybody.
Yeah.
He had the sword of Damocles. But yeah, so there we go, guys. That's what we got on Borderlands. Randy again stuck his foot in his mouth on value and cost, but ultimately it's good news. It sounds like they've listened to all the feedback that we've had, and they're also leaning even harder into the RPG elements of the game, which I'm happy about. I'm looking forward to that. So there's that. Moving on. Excuse me. We have
to another CEO.
No, well, yes, but not that one. But we are gonna have this one here. So I've got some good news and I've got some bad news, and we're gonna start with the bad news because the context is gonna be the good news in this case. So the bad news, and I'll read this headline here. If you're a fan of the Death Stranding games. Hideo Kojima says he's already written a concept for Death Stranding 3, but he wants someone else to make it. And he was basically at an event, and there was a bit of a Q&A. And when the possibility of Death Stranding 3 got brought up, essentially, Kojima spoke. And now this might sound a little bit weird, especially towards the end, but keep in mind this was said in Japanese and then translated. But Hideo Kojima said, "I am not planning to do Death Stranding 3 at the moment because the end of Death Stranding 2 was my finale of 1 and 2, but I already wrote the concept of Death Stranding 3. So I have that in data." But there you go. So that is what he's saying. He says, "I hope someone will create it for me." So Hideo Kojima, that's the bad news. If you're a fan of Death Stranding 1 and Death Stranding 2, is that Hideo Kojima is saying that he will not be directing Death Stranding 3. Now, the good news, and Jay knew what the good news was as soon as we started talking before the show started. And I don't know, Jay, what's the good news? If you were to look at Hideo Kojima historically, what's the good news?
Well, he does this pretty much with every franchise he gets involved in.
Every time.
And he's never said this out loud, and I wouldn't have thought this 15 years ago. But here's a guy whose head is full of stories. His head is full of stories. He also knows he's got more years behind him than he does in front of him. And I think he wants to move on and tell those stories, man. Which is good news for us because we're probably going to get some crazy, far out, bizarre, overarching, underlying story that is going to turn out to be wonderful.
Well, I mean, that is certainly true. He's always going to create weird stuff. But the big good news is essentially that he's going to make Death Stranding 3. Guys, if Death Stranding 3 gets made, it's going to be made by Hideo Kojima because this is his MO. He always says, "That's it. I'm done. We're packing it up." And that's not how it works out. I, in fact, have a comprehensive list of when this happened in Metal Gear Solid, or the Metal Gear series. So for those that may not be aware, everybody kind of thinks of Metal Gear Solid as being the start of the Metal Gear series, but it's not. The Metal Gear series actually started on like NES, like the Nintendo systems. And then Metal Gear Solid, the one on PlayStation, is the one that everybody's kind of familiar with. But that was actually just another entry in the series. But in 1998, after Metal Gear Solid released, Kojima publicly stated that he was finished with the series and he wanted to focus on new projects. In fact, little point of trivia here, at one point he considered making a game about a police robot squad, which later became the inspiration for Policenauts, a game I had never heard of. But fan demand and Kojima pressure after the insane success of Metal Gear Solid pulled him back in. And of course, he directed Metal Gear Solid 2. And then
the love of a very young Jeff Keighley.
yes. Which is still absolutely indecent to this day. And then Metal Gear Solid 2. So he worked on Metal Gear Solid 2, which released in 2001. And after Metal Gear Solid 2 released, Kojima again insisted this would be his last one to direct. And Konami initially started Metal Gear Solid 3 without Kojima, but Kojima became dissatisfied with the progress that he was seeing in the game and returned to direct it to make sure it lived up to expectations.
Which it did.
Yes. So he came back and he did Metal Gear Solid 3. Now, as one might suspect, given our attitude towards this and the theme here, after Metal Gear Solid 3 released in 2004, he declared again he would not direct the next installment, stating that he wanted younger staff to take over. However, during development, whenever it wasn't going to his liking, he again stepped into the director's chair for Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. After Metal Gear Solid 4, he again said that that was going to be his swan song as a director. He then pivoted to handhelds, and he said that he would only produce Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, which was the PSP, the handheld Metal Gear Solid game, which he ended up directing himself to the point that he called it a true numbered sequel in everything but name.
Yeah, it is. It's considered canon now.
Yes, and then after Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, he again strongly hinted that he would not be making the next Metal Gear game, which ended up being Metal Gear Solid 5, which he, of course, did in fact direct. And the only reason that he hasn't directed a Metal Gear Solid 6 was because of the fallout between him and Konami. And then, of course, that led to the creation of his own studio. And we now have Death Stranding. He has made 1. He has made 2. He now says that he is not making 3. Ladies and gentlemen, fear not. Do not cry for me, Argentina. If there is going to be a Death Stranding 3, I assure you, I would put everything on the fact that he will be, like, Hideo Kojima will be the man that directs that game.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, because I lived that entire timeline. So did you, that we just talked about. And I felt like his only mistake along the way was not using David Hayter in Metal Gear Solid 5.
We can't do spoilers here, but there's a very good reason why he did not use David Hayter for Metal Gear Solid 5. It is revealed.
I don't know what that reason is. I never looked it up, but it's not going to matter what that reason is for me. And here's the thing. I love Kiefer Sutherland. I do. But yeah, man, just killed me with that. But anyway, back to the topic at hand.
All right. Spoilers for the next 15 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to throw up the spoiler hands. I'm going to tell Jay why it's so important. And then when the spoiler hands go down, the spoiler is over. Jay, the reason that they did not use David Hayter for the voice of Snake in Metal Gear Solid 5 is because you were not, in fact, playing as Snake. You were playing as someone that was brainwashed to believe he was Snake. Because Kojima.
Okay, here's the thing. I know that, but when I see that guy's face on the screen, I want to hear David Hayter's voice.
I understand. Anyways, okay. Spoiler hands down. All right. So, but there we go. That's just what's going to happen. He will be the one that directs Death Stranding 3. However, one thing though, I mean, you mentioned we're going to continue to get weird, crazy stuff from him, and that's one thing that people have said, a lot of people they've actually used it as a complaint against Kojima. I think it's one of the things that gets us so many really interesting things from him. And that is that people will say that he wants to make movies more than he wants to make games. Because whenever you ask him about art that inspires him or that he appreciates or anything like that, it always comes back to movies. He is a massive movie buff. And I think that he just enjoys these worlds, and games is the way that he chooses to make those. So we get these very long, very extended cutscenes.
Oh, they're cinematic gold, dude. Most of them.
Yeah, and in fact, I think, I think that he's perfectly capable of making a movie, but I think that it would just, I don't know if he would enjoy that, because when you make the movie, you have to, you might have 2.5 max hours that you have to tell your story. And I just don't think that he wants to be that confined. So I think that he has a great appreciation for filmmakers and what they do, but I think he's always going to need a much larger, palette to put his art on. I think he's going to need
his mind is definitely a candidate for the 10 episode limited series format.
Absolutely. Yeah,
like Band of Brothers.
I would love to see
like Band of Brothers. That's
a Hideo Kojima
10
production.
episode. Yeah, he'd be perfect for that.
Dude,
and they don't need to call it season 1. They need to say whatever it is. I'm just going to use this as an example. Metal Gear Solid, a 10 episode limited series event.
Yeah, I would love to see. I would love to see him come up with something and try his hand at it. And I'm sure that he's also got. There's probably like 5 other crazy, insane franchise ideas that he has for his own game studio, though. So I'm sure he'll tune into this. I bet he watches this Splinter Cell series that's coming to Netflix with a renewed focus. I bet. I'm just assuming. I have to hope. Speaking of that, I have to hope that maybe, just maybe, I've not heard any rumors or anything yet, but I mean, you're making a Netflix show, a very highly touted Netflix show now about a very beloved franchise, and I know that it's been a thing they've teased for years and years, but we've never got. Surely they're working on another installment, right? Surely we're going to get another entry in the series.
Yeah,
hopefully.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Have you heard any rumors? Because I haven't.
I have not.
Man, I hope that they don't drop, because if they don't, they are missing such an opportunity to, feed off of. I mean, obviously the thing's going to release way before anything, but just to announce that it's coming and to have people invested, because there's going to be tons of people that watch this that have no idea what Splinter Cell is. They've never heard of it before.
Yeah.
And if they watch this, just let them know, like, hey, we got some new stuff coming. Like, I would love, even if it was just a remaster of the first game or something like that.
Yeah,
or like not a remaster but a remake.
Yeah, that was a great game.
Modern sensitivities. Yeah, and then you have like the spy versus terrorists or whatever they called it.
Mercs versus spies.
Yeah. Spies versus mercenaries. That's what it was. Okay, let's see the next one I've got here. So here we'll talk about another CEO, and this should go quickly, but it's long overdue. And that is that Bungie CEO Pete Parsons retires. With Destiny 2 sentiment at an all-time low and pressure from Sony growing, Parsons has decided it's time to pass the torch and head for an exit. And basically, this is what we have said needed to happen for a long time. It has been a string of just bad PR, bad business decisions. Awful.
Obviously bad optics, dude. Buying all
Everything.
These cars but laying people off.
Yes. So that's been the thing. So we have let's see. I don't even know. I don't remember the order that this all happened in, but basically in no particular order. We had Destiny 2, which was like a beloved game, and they stopped listening to the fans. They stopped listening to everybody in the community, and they just started, I don't know, like they just, like the raids weren't the same. Everything, it just everybody turned sour on it. So they dropped the ball in Destiny 2. We've done multiple videos on Marathon, and we had just the fact that Marathon just wasn't coming together, and people that got hands-on, they're just like, I don't know, there's something missing. Then there was, of course, the whole art theft scandal, which was, again, it wasn't, oh, maybe they stole art. It was blatant.
They stole art.
They
That shit got
100% stole art. We showed the examples. They later went on to admit that it happened, even though they're like, hey, that was a different guy. He's no longer here with us. But, I mean, they 100% stole art. And then, we had, like Jay mentioned, there were multiple rounds of layoffs for the team, all while Pete Parsons was showing off his crazy collection of horrendously expensive cars. Now, granted, you work yourself into a position and you make a lot of money. You can spend that money however you want. I'm not going to pocket watch anybody. Whatever you want to do with your money, that's your business. However, if you're going to put it out there and you're going to I don't remember what the website was. There's some website where you can post your car collections or whatever, and then other car snobs can make comments, but put that out publicly and you're still bragging about it. And they were new posts after people were laid off. It's just a bad look. So,
gloating in general is a bad look. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But doing it at the literally, not figuratively, doing it literally at the expense of the people that have made you successful.
Yes. So the reason that people hated you, Pete, wasn't because you were successful. The reason is that because you were gloating while
you were just
families, employees, all those people that got you there, while they were losing their jobs, they were losing their homes. That's why people hate you, Pete. So Pete is leaving Bungie, and it couldn't have happened to a better guy. I wish him nothing but the just worst retirement. I really, really hope that things just go poorly for him, and whoever they get to head up Bungie in replacement, I mean, it's got to be better than what they've had. But I hope that it's somebody that actually cares and can turn something around. That's the other thing is that there have been Sony stakeholder calls where they've basically mentioned that sort of the free reign that Bungie has been enjoying since PlayStation purchased them, that they're gonna rein them in. They're not gonna be able to kind of operate as independently as they had been, because obviously with Marathon they've just not been returning, and Destiny 2, they've just not been returning quality that they were expected. So essentially it's that employee that you have at work that's proven that they can't work unsupervised.
Yeah, and here's a hot take for you too. When Destiny 2 first hit and Division 2 was in that talk, because major comparisons were made to the two games because of how layered they were in their character development, as far as all the different things you had to be concerned with in both games to be successful, your build and how much you did put into this and how much you put into that. And now it's turned out to be a tortoise and the hare situation where Destiny 2's playing the hare, and they came out of the gate killing it, and it made Division 2 look bad. But Division 2 has obviously been playing the long game, because at Gamescom we get an announcement again for another huge expansion called Survivors, where DC is going to get the winterized treatment that New York had in the first game and be snowed over. And the first game also had a very minimalistic Survivor DLC. So, here's a game that's playing. And not only that, if let's say PCs were not even a thing, this is still a PS4 game getting
That's
DLC.
Exactly what I was about to say.
It's a PS4 game getting DLC.
Yep.
That's insane, man.
Yep. They
not a newer PS4 game, an older one.
Destiny 2 actually went on, Destiny 2 initially launched on PlayStation 4, and then as it went on, they later eventually released a PS5 upgrade patch if you wanted to get heavier detailed textures and faster frame rates and all this stuff. Division never did that. Division is still a PlayStation 4 game, and it looks great. I will say, it still looks fantastic.
Still holds up.
And you've actually gotten me hooked on it again, and then you've left me high and dry. But I do need your guidance.
I will gladly play.
I do need your guidance on some of the stuff, because I've forgotten how years ago I was playing on Xbox, and so I've kind of forgotten how this whole color thing starts with whenever you have your equipment, and I know that you can match things to I don't know, whatever. But I'm going to need your help to get leveled up. But yeah,
man, we got a long weekend. Weekend. Let's get into it at some point this weekend.
Absolutely. Yeah, Labor Day. Labor Day, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Division 2. I'm very excited about Division 2. I was hoping that they were going to announce Division 3, but in lieu of that, I'm glad that we're getting more Division 2, and that's one thing as well. As Destiny 2 would remove content from the game. They would have to make some sort of in-game reason why the planet Mars disappeared and whatever. They would like block out these things. But whenever they did that, any new players that came on, they no longer had access to the story and the missions that took place on Mars. So even if you got Destiny 2 and you bought all of the expansion packs for it, you didn't actually have access to some of these planets unless and until they brought them back. And some of them they brought back, some of them they didn't. But Division 2, not only did they never do that, they never removed anything from the game. They continued to add locations to the game, even adding New York, like you mentioned, even adding New York to the game and Brooklyn to the game. It's just night and day. And for the Division, I know it's been a bit of a long process, and they had a rough patch there too, but they did the revolutionary practice of listening to your players.
Yeah.
What a novel idea.
And they do you can see it, like if you follow them on Reddit or anything, or their X site, and people will talk about stuff, and then eventually they'll be like, hey, we've heard you. We're going to implement this in the next update, and blah, blah, blah. And they will, man. And which is good. Now, it's not everything, because a lot of times people are just bitching and moaning about something that they don't like. So
that's why you have community managers. You have community managers. They can kind of like handle that.
Yeah.
But
they're like, hey, you don't really want this. You think you do, but you don't, because this is what will happen.
Or that's the other thing is having a good community manager lets a person that is PR trained, be between you and the community. So another one, Randy, community manager, man. That's let them do the talking.
Yeah, it's a personified ballistic shield. It's exactly what it is.
I'm sure that there's a community manager for Borderlands, and we just don't know his name
or he's just not good at his job.
Or he's not good at his job. Yeah.
Which we already know. Okay, so
let's see. Next news item, and I see here that you have something that's probably going to tie into this.
Yes,
I'm just going to throw this up here. So one thing that we have been excited since the trailer debuted on one of the many Jeff Keighley trailer and award shows, and that is The Expanse: Osiris Reborn, which obviously had super heavy Mass Effect vibes. Just looking at it,
we all knew it was going to. It's and I wasn't trying to cut you off, but
no, go.
Literally, James S.A. Corey, the two guys that write the books for like the main guy, was like heavily inspired by Mass Effect already when he came up with the story for Mass Effect. So, which was initially supposed to be a tabletop game. So, it's hard not to draw these comparisons, obviously.
Yeah, so basically some people have gotten some hands-on time with it. So this article is from IGN. They basically say that this is the best hope for a new BioWare-style RPG, which is quite sad when BioWare is working on a new Mass Effect game, but they have done so poorly with so many properties and entries in various. We had Anthem, then we had Dragon Age, and we had the last Mass Effect game so poorly with so many things that now nobody has any faith in BioWare anymore. So everybody's like, this is what we're having to hitch our horses to, is The Expanse. So some hands-on time has been had with The Expanse. We of course saw the original release trailer. And then last week we talked about, I believe it was last week, we talked about the new trailer that they had where you got to see some of the environments. And in doing so, they had the player character walking through those environments. So you kind of got to see the third person over the shoulder kind of view that we would have during gameplay, and kind of got to see the character walking, and still gave very Mass Effect vibes, and kind of gave us hope that that's what we were going to get. They were going to really lock in on that Mass Effect feel. So people have gotten hands on, and happy to confirm it is very Mass Effect so far, to the point that it is, in fact, the combat is cover-based shooting. So it's 100% drawing from Mass Effect and its success. So there's cover-based shooting. There are going to be certain abilities. One thing that they do mention, of course, if you are a fan of The Expanse, you will know that the word that I keep, or the term that I keep seeing thrown around, is hard sci-fi, which basically it's I guess the word to say is like a more grounded sci-fi. So it's everybody's humans. There's not like crazy alien races or anything like that. It's all humans and that kind of stuff. Near future sci-fi.
If you'll allow me to cut in.
I will. I shall.
I'm one of the weirdos in college that took 6 hours of science fiction lit. And believe it or not, technically, science fiction is broken into 2 schools: soft science fiction and hard science fiction. Soft science fiction being a story that is it's surface level story. It is what it is. Star Wars would be soft science fiction if it were science fiction at all. There's no underlying meaning. The tech is never really explained. It just exists. Hard science fiction is Foundation and the Robot Trilogy and anything by Arthur C. Clarke. And The Expanse is definitely hard science fiction because we get Newtonian physics in space. We get one of the coolest things, and even Neil deGrasse Tyson would agree with this, that nobody had ever seen in a show before this, was the fact that the ships flip for a retro burn many, many, many thousands of kilometers before they need to get where they're going, so that they don't crash into whatever it is they're trying to get to.
Because
and all that has to be right. And because you're literally governed by inertia. So
there's no brakes in a vacuum.
Yeah. So no show had ever done it. So, I mean, technically, this is the hardest of hard science fiction in visual media. Now, books have all kinds of them, but yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there because it actually is the 2 schools of thought when you're talking about science fiction. So sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great, because like you said, so it all has, which makes sense why it's being thrown around, because everything sort of has an explanation, and they tie it back to things that we know. So that would explain again why they're not just sort of speculating at completely separate from us,
right,
aliens or anything like that. It's all us. And obviously we do have Martians and this kind of thing. We've already talked about how they do such a great job of world building, of kind of humanity, how it's divided. We've got the people that stayed on Earth. We've got the people that have basically lived their entire lives on space stations and that kind of thing, and the humans that went and inhabited Mars. And the differences that sort of over time developed as a result of that were all humans, but like the ones that grew up in space stations, and they didn't have gravity, they have longer limbs and less dense bones, and all sorts of stuff. They did like a really great job of really thinking through all of this. So the game is much the same. So there's not going to be anything crazy. So we do have the cover-based shooting. There will be certain abilities. Don't know exactly the depth of those abilities, but they said it's not going to be anything crazy. It's not going to be anything, like the biotic abilities in Mass Effect or anything like that. They're not going to be mutants, but obviously they have a lot of cool technology. So I'm assuming that a lot of the abilities is going to revolve around the different sorts of technology that you'll have access to. And they also mentioned they got to play a little bit of a chunk from the story. They also got to play and get some hands-on with the dialogue trees and that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's cool, man.
Yeah, and basically that's where they say that the writing is not as sharp as Mass Effect or even previous Owlcat games, with Owlcat being the developers of this game. But so they're like, yeah, it was made it a little bit more difficult to kind of like get connected to the companions that we had. But they also pointed out that it is just a demo. It was a very small section that they were playing, and obviously things like this, they play out over tens, if not hundreds of hours to get this fleshed out. So they couldn't make any particular judgment calls on the quality of the writing there just because of how little they got to see of it. But they just said it felt kind of flat. Now, I am not concerned about that. One, like they said, obviously you take that sort of what could be considered flat in a vacuum could be really great world building if you expand that out. Like if you took one page from a Dune novel, it would probably, especially Dune 1, it would just read like incredibly boring political nonsense. But if you put that in context of the entire book, it's really fascinating. So that could be going on here. Also, keep in mind, this is very early in development. We don't even know. They haven't even given us a year that this is going to release.
Yeah, we don't have a roadmap at all.
Yeah. They haven't even said coming 2026 or 2020. We've got nothing.
Yeah.
So they have plenty of time to rework. We don't even know if the section that they played, because this would have been an old trick from game development of yesteryear. We don't even know if that's actually from the game or not.
It could just be a tech demo.
Yeah. Back in the day, that used to be a thing that they would do all the times, where they would have what they call a vertical slice of the game, where it was really intended just to get you a feel. Like they would create something specifically for the demo that would kind of summarize, the
what
general,
you can do in the game.
Yeah. Where it's like where it's not actually from any of the aspects of the game. So it could even be something like that, where it's like not even actually ripped from the game, but actually created for the express purpose of having somebody just play it to get a feel.
Well,
but I'm excited for it. And I was going to ask you about this thing that I keep seeing in the corner. I have to imagine that it plays in.
Okay, so I've been following their X page for quite a while, and some of their other social media Owlcat games, and now they've set aside, that separate. What was it? Where was it? I had it on here at some point. I guess I threw it off of there.
Oh, and while you're looking at that, I will throw out one other thing that I forgot to mention is they also did say though that the time frame that the game takes place in, it's basically going to be taking place at the same time as the first few books in the first few.
That's my piece. That's what I'm going to talk about. Sorry, but
no, go for it. I'm sorry. I apologize to you, Jay.
Anyway, I was following that this week, and it seemed like everybody was talking about, hey, we know they talked about, hey, it's going to be within the confines of the show. But that's all they really said. And then, okay, folks, there's basically three types of Expanse fans. There's people that just watch the show. There's people that watch the show and know there are books. And then there's people that watch the show and have read the books. So
I am door number 2.
If you are in door number 1 or door number 2, when I throw this up here in a second, you're going to have an old shit moment. Or if you're a Hot Fuzz fan, you're going to have a by the power of Grayskull moment. So this is the Expanse timeline.
Whoa.
Which is gigantic. You can see the show. Of course, you can look at the icons on the left here and see the show in the middle here with season 1 through 6 and where they kind of fall in to the book order. And, you got books 9 through there, and then there's a whole boatload of comics. And then the only game we have, which is now considered canon, is the Expanse Telltale series, which is a great game, by the way.
I was going to ask if you ever played that. I actually never did play it. Okay.
I did. And, I love that character anyway. But the books up here, the novellas and the shorts, I mean, you can see there's a short up here called The Churn, which you always heard Amos reference in the show. And there's nothing wrong with just watching the show, but you can see the show is not giving you the whole vertical slice, as you called it. So you're only getting through a certain amount through Babylon's Ashes. But the game is supposed to, there's probably going to be flashbacks to book 1 or to things within the timeline of book 1. And then mostly book 2 and 3 is what we're being told is going to be the game. But as you can see, there is a folks, if you're looking for a wealth of, if you just don't have enough with the show, you can see right here, there is a cornucopia of places to find content about this.
There's a word you don't hear every day.
Yeah. So anyway,
well, I'm gonna have to. I've been meaning to for a long time. I'm gonna have to just go ahead and get book one and start. I just need to start in earnest.
Yeah,
and
and
read
it
'em.
plays out. It plays out different than the show. In book one, to give you an idea what you're getting into, each chapter is named after a character. So you'll get a Miller chapter, and then you'll get a Holden chapter. And oddly enough, Avasarala doesn't even really show up in the first book, which she was an integral part of season one, but she doesn't really show up that much in the first book. So that ought to tell you something. But anyway, yeah, definitely, dude. And the best way to read them is they come in you can get them in 3-book bundles where you get books 1 through 3 or 4 through 6 or whatever. There's a gigantic bundle. Obviously, that's a triple-digit expense right there. But
yeah, sure.
The 3-book bundles are the best, especially if you don't know, because you might start reading it and be like, I like the show better. I'm sure there's people that's happened to.
Well, even in situations where and there have certainly been none immediately come to mind, but I know that there's been situations where I've seen a show and then I've read books and I've been like, actually, I kind of prefer the show better. But I always do appreciate the books, even in those situations, just because you get a lot more context, a lot more history, a lot more lore.
Yeah.
So even if you prefer the show over the books, I always think it's worth going into the books just to get the added context.
Yeah, I would definitely. And I'm just going to piggyback another show that has great books. Is Altered Carbon. You will definitely like those books better than the show.
Yeah, because I love season 1 of Altered Carbon, and season 2 I thought was dog shit.
And I hate it because I love Anthony Mackie.
I was about to say, and it's not Anthony Mackie's fault. He did what he was told to do. Although,
in fact, there was a lot of actors in that second season that I absolutely adore.
A lot of great
as far
actors,
as their bodies of work. I don't even know the Asian guy that plays the legit Takeshi Kovacs, but he's been in so many things and he's good in everything he's in. And then what's her name that played Misty Knight in Daredevil and the Marvel Netflix series that plays the bounty hunter? She was excellent. And of course, anytime we get what's his name, Dr. Jackson from Stargate in a show, even though he was barely in that one, but still, long story short, what a waste for those actors.
Yeah, again, that's one thing where it's just I don't think I have ever seen a more clear example where, again, season 1 was edgy. It was very flashy. You could look and you could see the money leaping off of the screen. It looked every bit as futuristic as it should have. And it was an intoxicating world that they kind of built in more ways than one. And
the writing was good too, man.
Yeah, and it was so great. And then, I mean, the absolute contrast between season 1 and season 2 was unreal, because season 2, everywhere they went, it looked like it was shot in like a cave. Like there was no neon, there was no semblance of the future. I mean, everything was inside. You never saw anything outside. It was just like absolute night and day. I don't know if they got like, okay, we'll renew you, but you're going to get a fourth of the budget, or I don't know what happened, or if season 2 was just an embezzling scheme for somebody and they ran away with most of it.
No
but
shit.
Man, it was an absolute night and day comparison, and it was sad.
The one-off anime that they did was way better.
Yeah.
Than the second season. And that one-off anime actually is one of the stories in the books. But yeah, definitely if you can pick up those, I think it's Richard Morgan is the writer, but definitely if you can pick up those books, I would read them, because the level of detail, you're talking about hard science fiction. When you're talking about cortical stacks and sleeves and, DHF downloads on, that's hard science fiction right there.
Let's see. Let me go into this next one here. Let me bring this up. So one of the things that we mentioned earlier in the show, we have Outer Worlds 2. Some people, we've gotten some news outlets as well as some content creators have gotten access to Outer Worlds 2. This just started coming out, like yesterday. So I haven't gotten a chance to go through a ton of it yet. But this article here, so this one was, let me pull it up here. I believe this was from, PC. Nope, sorry, that's the wrong one.
I wish they
I don't
quit
remember.
comparing this to Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah,
This deserves to be its own thing. I realize they're riding the coattails of the fact that they own the best Fallout game ever, but it needs to be its own thing. It's not fair to Outer Worlds that's the comparison every time.
true.
Sorry.
No worries.
I just,
But I mean, but
that shit
some of the
bugs
people
the
that
shit out of me,
but some
man.
of the people that made New Vegas are in this, so
Yeah.
that's why they bring it. But it sounds like, you know, like whereas Outer Worlds 1 was more of a proof of concept, and they said that from the beginning. They never said, "Hey, this is
Yeah.
going to be some vast thing." They said, "Hey, this is short. We're just playing around, and you know, we just think this is fun." And so now we have Outer Worlds 2, and you know, we're finally getting kind of the promise of, you know, what we were teased in the first one. So to summarize this article, I kind of cut out a few things here. So basically, they spent a lot of time talking about the larger scope, and it says the game is described as being much larger with a stronger emphasis on the dialogue and deeper RPG systems. So obviously, dialogue was a really key component of the first game. They did have multiple paths and multiple ways to solve multiple stories, and a lot of that revolved in the different choices that you made within the conversation. So they're leaning into that even more now. And I will say that a lot of people, like whenever I've looked at different videos that have been made and different articles, some people are more positive than others about it. Like obviously this guy, you know, from Games Radar was really thrilled with it, but I don't think I haven't seen anybody that is down on it. The worst that I have seen, I would describe as cautious optimism, where they're like, I like what I'm seeing here, but I don't know if it's enough. But
Yeah,
this guy was really pleased with it. Andrew Brown from Games Radar. Character creation. So they have an even more detailed character creator, and they have a new positive and negative trait system, which this was something that you could kind of get in the first one, where you could like you could end up getting like a fear or something like that. Something could happen and you could sort of accept this trait, and it would give you a bonus, and it would also be a negative. And it could be something like I don't remember all of them. Maybe it was like arachnophobia or something like that. And so it might be like, well, if you see an 8-legged alien, well, you're scared of it, but you also have your attacks are stronger. Maybe you have stronger brute strength or something like that. So they have that now built into the creation. Before, you had to kind of stumble upon these opportunities to develop these negative traits that had also some positive trade-offs. Now you can do that straight from the character creation screen. And it also adds depth to like the player's background, stuff like that. Dialogue and writing, no surprise. Satirical and witty, it's still there. And this guy notes that when dialogue choices are notable, you know, so it actually, like, the game will tell you when, hey, the thing that you're about to say, it actually matters. So it'll let you know when something's notable and making the player feel like the decisions matter. So that's good. Also, if you're just kind of like dicking around, if it's at least it'll let you know, like, hey, this is going to be important. So you can be like, okay, let's focus on this one instead of doing the because you know they have even the first one, you know, they have the thing where you can turn the slider all the way down like intelligence, and then you're basically, you know, walking around with like an oath, and it reflects in the character dialogue. So character dialogue's always been fun. Combat and stealth, they mentioned that combat's been majorly improved. This guy described it as brilliant, and there's a new tactical time dilation system that helps with combat. I haven't seen it, but I have to assume that this will probably be a lot more streamlined than VATS, but I have to assume that this is kind of going to feel a lot like VATS in Fallout. This tactical time dilation to kind of, since we are talking about an RPG, to kind of give you time to be more focused on where you're shooting, that kind of thing. I can't guarantee that, but obviously these people have previously worked on Fallout. I just have to assume that it's going to be very VATS-like. Stealth has also been more fleshed out. Enemies responding to finding dead bodies, that kind of stuff. So the AI has been improved when it comes to that. And Halo developer 343 Industries assisted with the combat as well. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So combat was obviously a really big focus, and given that that studio is now owned by Microsoft, gave them access to 343, and the people behind Halo. So gave them an opportunity to do that because we know they're not doing a lot with Halo, given how that last one went.
Yeah, fair point.
But yeah, so that's the update on Outer Worlds 2. I'm happy that all seems to be good, and like I said, the worst I've seen anybody so far has been cautious optimism. But I love the first one, and even if they didn't, I mean, the list of improvements were long on this one, and even if it wasn't nearly as extensive as it was, just getting more of the first one would have been worth it for me. So I'm going to be easy to please on this one, especially since the first one was just, sold out the gate as proof of concept. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know. What are you thinking?
Yeah, man, it's so I have the what's it called, the Spacers edition of the first one.
Yeah,
and if you're just playing the game, the baseline game, yeah, it's short, and I get they said it was proof of concept, but they did add quite a lot of meaningful content. And it really gave off these like late 70s, early 80s sci-fi movie, like the Land of the Twisted Gorgons, stuff like that, kind of that Lost in Space episodes from the old Lost in Space TV show. And were there definite parallels to Bethesda game? Absolutely. There was no way not to do it. And even specifically to Fallout, but that's not a bad thing.
No. And and that's what these people worked on. So they took what they knew and they went further with it.
I thought they improved the melee combat, because I always felt like that's kind of lacking in Fallout, even though you can get some really cool and really unique melee style weapons in Fallout. I've never felt like that was the desired intent for Fallout. That's like a last ditch. Oh shit, I got bum rushed.
Well, even in Fallout, even the gunplay in Fallout feels janky if it were not for VATS. Like VATS is the only thing that makes it usable to do in combat. Like without VATS, it's a janky nightmare.
Well, I think with the latest and I don't know if you played the next gen edition of Fallout 4.
I have.
Okay. Well, I felt like that was a lot smoother. I felt like they did smooth that out, and probably a lot that had to do with the FPS uptick that we got, because there was a lot of times in OG Fallout 4 and even Fallout 3 where you'd get overwhelmed with super mutants and the game would just chuck along. It was not optimized even for console, which is crazy. So
a Fallout game being janky, that sounds unusual.
But I think there's a lot of Fallout fans out there and Elder Scrolls fans that would say the jank is part of it. That's part of the love. It's part of the endearing process.
I will say it's an accepted part of the game. You always know you're going to get some of that jank. However, it is not something I love. It's something that I know will be there and that I will have to accept. It is not something that I will miss when it is gone. Like whenever they do these remasters and it's like, oh, it runs so smooth now. I'm never like, oh man, you remember how the game froze for 3 minutes whenever you walked through this door? I miss that. I won't miss it. I
never will forget. I was playing Skyrim Special Edition. I fought a dragon. And obviously you fight dragons all the time in that game. But the dragon, we were on the edge of a rock face, and I was trying not to fall off because of fall damage. Well, the dragon fell. And instead of using his wings to fly, he just fell and he died. He was governed by the same mechanics that I was, and he died of fall damage.
He forgot he had wings.
I got credit for killing a dragon that I was like, yeah, okay. Well, that was a really cheap victory, but sure. Went back to the camp going, yeah, I freaking slayed your house dragon.
Killed that sumbitch.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I think the jank's an accepted part, not necessarily a love part. I get that, but I thought that the first Outer Worlds did a great job of doing away with some of that, and it took a few updates before they got there, but I felt like they did eventually get there.
Yeah, and so that's all I've got on that one. And then the last thing that I have as far as gaming news, and you will know far more about this than I will. I just figured we would use this as a bit of a launching point because you've actually played this and I have not. And that is our friends over at Star Citizen, Chris Roberts. So Star Citizen Squadron 42, which is the single player story campaign that has been in development for God only knows how long. So supposedly it is targeting a 2026 release. Chris wants it to be almost as big of an event as Grand Theft Auto 6 release. It won't be. But yeah, he is still saying 2026. I don't believe it, but he is claiming a 2026 release date for, and again, this is just Squadron 42. This is not Star Citizen proper. This is just this campaign.
So, for the sake of this conversation, although I am going to retro this at the end of this conversation, let's say it's coming out in 2026. They have a release date. It's coming out.
For the sake of the argument, huh?
Yes, for the sake of this conversation. First, I want to address will be almost as big an event as Grand Theft Auto 6. To the Star Citizen community, this is an absolutely factual statement. For the Star Citizen community.
I was about to say, however, that community is far smaller than the GTA community.
It will be close to that level of an event for the people that don't want to deal with online trolling, that are waiting for a single player Star Citizen level event or game. So I'm sure they're excited about it. Am I excited about it? Absolutely, dude. I've been on Star Citizen now for over a year. This is a single player campaign driven all-star, ridiculous all-star cast. I can't even name all of them, but just real quick off the top of my head, Gillian Anderson, Henry Cavill, Mark Strong.
A much younger Henry Cavill at this point. I mean, much younger, all of them. Henry Cavill wasn't even Henry Cavill at the time.
Yeah. Gary Oldman, Mark Hamill, whoever that guy's name is that plays the Onion Knight. I always forget his name, but I love that actor. He's great in it. There are so many people in this. And there is it's like an hour and a half.
So Squadron 42, just to provide some perspective to people. So whenever I say he wasn't even Henry Cavill yet. Squadron 42 began development in 2012. So these people's performances have been in the bag since probably at least the mid 2010s. So, we're talking about 10 years before today. So Henry Cavill was not Superman. He wasn't the Cavalrine. He was not the Henry Cavill that we know. And all these people were much. It's crazy how long this has been. These people have had performances in the bank for over a decade now for something that hasn't yet to release.
And listen, man, I'm going to tell you something. You can tell when you watch that hour. It's an hour and 16 minutes. Hold on just a second. I'm going to hook us up here. It's an hour and 16 minutes. That's the link. You can tell these people have aged, is my point. You're talking about 2012. It's when you see these people now, you're like, and they mocap these people as they were in 2012. So, but yeah, you can tell these are old performances. But dude, the level of detail, not only in Star Citizen, but in this is ridiculous. Mark Hamill's playing some kind of wing commander. Pardon the pun, since Chris Roberts did wing commander. Yeah. And he played Commander Blair in Wing Commander. And he's this salty dog veteran. And when your character comes on the boat at first, you don't even get to fly a ship. They don't have a ship for you. So they're in the middle of an attack, and you get put on like one of the guns on the capital ship, controlling one of the guns which all of this is built as a tutorial. So you can learn how to shoot and aim and all that stuff. And then Gillian Anderson's character will come up to you eventually and go, hey, the ship's falling apart. We got to get off of here. And then she'll die, but not dying. And you'll try to save her life. And then eventually you get your own seat. And I'm not giving anything away. I think they're going to do away. I think that was a vertical slice that won't even be in it. But watch the hour and 16-minute demo / movie. You will love it. And you'll be wanting this. I heard this was coming to console. Now, if it was coming to console, I would be down for that, because that's been one thing where it's like I've always enjoyed the thought of Star Citizen and the potential of Star Citizen, but it's never really been a thing that I've been particularly excited about, because it's never been a thing on console, and right now I'm just console player. So, if it was on console, that would be great. I would love to, and I would check it out then. And it's also important to point out that Squadron 42 is considered to be something completely separate from Star Citizen itself. Yes.
It's like its own project within that. So it's kind of like its own game off of the platform of Star Citizen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would enjoy playing it simply because you're not going to get wiped every time they do an update.
Yeah, we'll see though. We'll see. I don't have any particular confidence that this will ever release, but supposedly it's 2026. But we've been hearing this for a long time.
Yeah.
But that is the last piece of gaming news that we have. I know we've got some more casual gaming conversation here in a bit, but do you have any more gaming news, Jay?
I do not at all. You have covered everything that I would have covered anyway.
All right. Well, I have one piece of one piece of entertainment news before we go into anything, and that is this is a blow to us at Hardcore Casual. Very sad about this, and yeah, my girlfriend Whitney texted me this a few days ago, and I just said, "Oh, no season 2, I guess," and I was devastated whenever I found this. So that is that The Waterfront has been canceled by Netflix after 1 season. And
here's the thing, man. I
know what you're going to say, and I don't agree.
I'm the one that brought this up. I was like, you got to watch the show.
Yes.
But I really felt like it had nowhere to go after season 1. And so as much as I hate it, because I would have liked them to prove me wrong, I felt like they handled their big bad.
Yes.
And that was that as a one-off.
So here's the deal. I do appreciate that they wrapped everything up. I like that they didn't end everything on a cliffhanger. Now there were some things that were left unresolved, not big things, small things, interpersonal things, that kind of stuff. So I like that. So I like that they had a season. The season had a full arc, and that arc was resolved. And because I have seen, especially on Netflix, where a renewal is certainly never guaranteed.
Yeah.
And especially if you get up to like season 3, that's pretty long in the tooth for Netflix. So, since renewals never guaranteed, I've seen several shows on Netflix that will end seasons on a cliffhanger and they get canceled, and then that never gets resolved. So I'm certainly not one of these people that says, like, oh, since everything, that they had in the season was resolved, there's no reason for a season 2. I don't subscribe to that, because I would rather everything get resolved within 1 season, and then the next season has its own things. But so I agree that the most of what they had was resolved in season 1, but then they had, like I said, they had some interpersonal things that they had going for basically all the characters, and they kind of had this thing set up where there's sort of this family criminal empire that's in this town, this Bay Area town, or this coastal town. And kind of getting some stability around that, and I think that season 2 would have been fun. Like we had people that were at odds that were now sort of working together. I was really excited for a season 2 and what they could have done with what they had built in season 1. But so it's one of those things where it's kind of bittersweet, where now we'll never know what could be with some of that stuff. However, it at least, as Jay said, most of the the big bad, all that stuff, it was resolved, so it at least doesn't leave us with a bitter taste in our mouths, and I appreciate that about the way that they handled it. Now I did read some articles, and it mentioned that this had better numbers than a lot of other Netflix shows. It did way better than a lot of other Netflix shows.
Yeah.
And but they mentioned that, I guess, this was from, I think it was Universal Studios that actually produced Waterfront. So it wasn't produced by Netflix Studios. Like, Netflix bought this show from Universal. So there's also the possibility that maybe, since it wasn't wholly owned by Netflix, that maybe the metrics that they held it to needed to be even higher for them to consider it a success, maybe because of some additional investment or profit share. Who knows what it is? But bottom line, it didn't make the cut. So there's that. But I will say this, that it's not similar, but it is a thing that's now on Netflix, and it's one of my favorite shows. And it's new to Netflix, though. It's not a Netflix original, but it is new to Netflix, and that is Sneaky Pete. If you have not seen
I love
Sneaky Pete, I cannot recommend Sneaky Pete more highly. So
is this your first watch?
No. I watched it whenever it was coming out on Amazon. or Hulu or whatever it was. But I'm just letting any listeners know that now that it is on Netflix, watch Sneaky Pete. It is so good. It is a blend of so many of my favorite things. I love heist movies and shows, and this has a little bit of heist. It's a little bit of misdirection. There's super witty dialogue. There is really smart storytelling. If you're a fan of Guy Ritchie's version of storytelling, where the dialogue is very witty and there's a lot of moving pieces that interact with one another, that this storyline seems to be separate from this storyline and then they collide. This is the show that you want to see. So it's 3 seasons and it's now on Netflix. So if you need something to watch, I recommend Sneaky Pete on Netflix.
It is, and Giovanni Ribisi is freaking world class, dude. I've loved him in everything he's been in.
And it was a Bryan Cranston produced show, and he was in the first season.
Shit. Yeah. But yeah, excellent show.
So there we go. Yeah, Waterfront canceled. So the only salve I can offer you is Sneaky Pete to make it all better. But that's it. That's the news. So we had quite a bit of gaming news. That's really the only entertainment news that I have. Nothing else is crazy. There's been some stuff, but nothing that I felt particularly compelled towards. So I know, Jay, in your sort of bag of tricks here, you've had something waiting in the wings that you wanted to discuss.
Well, it's 2 topics. One's going to gel into the other one, but so we brought up a couple of podcasts last week that I've enjoyed watching over the past few weeks. One of which was Katie Sackhoff's show, but the other one was the Decon Chamber with Connor Trenier and Dominic Keating of Star Trek Enterprise fame, which anytime I watch anything Star Trek related, it gets me on a Star Trek binge. And I ended up going back to watch Star Trek Enterprise, and I'm handpicking the episodes I watch. I'm not watching all of them. And we obviously had 4 seasons, and both of those guys on the show are butthurt that they did. In Star Trek, it's called making the 7. You got to get 7 seasons. And I'm always, if I could sit down with any of these guys that didn't make the 7, I would remind them that William Shatner's Star Trek only made it 3 seasons. There's only been 3 shows that have made the 7. Next Gen, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine. And yes, Enterprise is one of those shows that started out, had a horrible launch. It didn't get early good reviews, but it over time has become a cult favorite. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've become more grounded in our science fiction, and it showed the grittier Enterprise, man. They only had like 80 people on the crew. It was a small ship. They didn't have shields. They had to polarize the hull plating. They had, a grappling hook instead of a tractor beam.
Yeah, see, I've never seen it.
You should watch it.
Yeah, I've seen some Star Trek here and there. I've seen the movies and stuff. I've never done a lot of Star Wars, but Star Trek. But I do know that Star Trek Enterprise, I always just heard it referred to as the one where it was a lot dirtier. Like, you go to the engine room and you came back dirty. Like, the ships used oil and stuff like that. It wasn't all like clean and sterile. Like, the engine room didn't look like a dentist's office.
Right. Yeah. The ship was very gray. I like to use, it was grayed out in a lot of play. There wasn't a lot of amenities in this ship. And this was the ship. In fact, the Enterprise was decommissioned after Archer's command. And it didn't come back until Pike. So
I don't even know who Archer is.
Archer was the Scott Bakula's character. He was the first captain of the Enterprise starship. And then Pike was next, and then Kirk, and the rest is history. But anyway, so it got back into that show, and then of course I was playing Marvel Heroes Omega, which is already kind of somewhat of a retro game, but the combination of that and watching Star Trek and listening to the Decon Chamber got me back into Star Trek Online, which has been around for about 15 years now. Freaking wonderful game if you're a Trekkie. And then this week, and I'm probably one of the 20 people that play this. So I was a big fan of the first 2 games in this franchise. and they were on. I think they were on Xbox 360, not Xbox original, but one of them might have been Xbox original. And you want to talk about something that's big, dumb fun. But back then, I had 10 or 11 friends, and we played together online all the time. And the game is Earth Defense Force, which plays like the old school 60s Godzilla movies in a way. So basically, you're just this infantry soldier. There's no leveling up.
Is this this third person perspective?
It's third person over the shoulder.
Okay.
You can pick to play in the giant insect apocalypse, the giant robot apocalypse.
I have never played this, but I have seen it played.
Well, it got added to the PlayStation Plus catalog this past weekend, and this is the 6th iteration of the game. And never in the history of the game, out of 3,000 plus reviews, has it ever held a 4.9 out of 5 rating amongst players until now. This is one of those games. It's fun to play solo, but man, you will never have more laughable combat fun with friends than this franchise.
So very Helldivers 2-esque in that sense, where it's just chaotic good times.
Yeah, I mean, you're in the middle of this generic town, and they're coming around and there'll be a million giant ants that you're trying to take out.
It's like Dynasty Warriors with aliens.
Exactly. But I feel like the gunplay is great in it, and some of the vehicles you get later on, if you're allowed to have vehicles, whether you're flying or whatever, the hover bikes or rocket launchers. But my favorite are the giant robots. Those are always the favorite ones to fight. But I downloaded it last night. I just call it EDF, Earth Defense Force. But I'm looking forward to playing this new one. Like I said, I was a huge fan of 1 and 2. And then I either played 3 or 4, and I skipped 5. 5 was crazy expensive, and it never came out for free. And now we have EDF 6 for free. So I'm going to play some of that, maybe a little bit tonight. Who knows? But just to get back into it. But folks, if you're looking for a big, dumb, fun game to have fun with your friends, and one of those you could probably play it and still have regular conversations about what's going on in your life, or have that one friend that's like, are you guys going to fucking help me or not? I can't get out. One of those situations. You'll hear a lot of those just watching gameplay vids on it. But it got me to start thinking about franchises and some of my favorite franchises. And while EDF is definitely not in my top probably 10 franchises of all time, it's a fun franchise. And for me, the second one was my favorite one so far. Although I feel like this new one's going to be my favorite one. So it got me thinking, hey, man, let's talk about what our favorite game in a franchise was. And I thought that's a good category, and we don't have to do anything crazy with it. And hold on, I told my son I would tell him that when I started talking about this.
Well, no problem. And I also see for any viewers as well, please feel free, leave a comment. Let us know what your favorite entry of a particular franchise was. And love to talk about those, especially if it's anything that we're aware of.
So since I'm broaching this topic, I would like to give you the first opportunity to name a franchise and then name your favorite game in that franchise. And then, give me a couple minutes on why that one's the best one.
Yeah. So, I mean, this one is not going to be any secret. My favorite franchise is well known. You know what it is. It's one of your favorite franchises too. And I think anybody that loves this franchise, I would be surprised if there was, more than 5% of people that you surveyed that did not have the exact same preference out of the series. So my favorite gaming series of all time is the Mass Effect series, and I think that the best entry in that series is Mass Effect 2. I think it's hands down, and there's any number of reasons. Just to name a few. One, it's kind of like we were just talking about with Waterfront, right? Where, hey, Waterfront had a thing on season 1, and you kind of took that trip, and it resolved itself at the end of season 1. There's still some hanging stuff, but the thing that you started off with dealing with, like that issue got resolved. And in Mass Effect 2, you got a satisfying resolution to the problem presented in Mass Effect at the beginning of Mass Effect 2, while still having the greater story of the trilogy playing in the background. But you got to resolve that. And the resolution to Mass Effect 2 was far more satisfying than the resolution that you got to the entire series in Mass Effect 3. Even after they did their whole retooling, extended ending, all that stuff, it still wasn't a satisfying ending. I love the series, but that's one where it's like, it's all great except for the ending. And even with the extended endings, you kind of had to give yourself like a head canon where it's like, okay, I reject all of these endings, and this is how I think that it should have ended. But you don't have to do that in Mass Effect 2. You have a really great bow put on the story that you started at the beginning. I think the companions are great. You have a bunch of them, and we get to see the loyalty missions and how those really come into play, and you get to really get deep with the companions. The combat
you have to be a hell of a diplomat.
Oh yeah. So I don't want to spoil anything, but to get the best ending out of in Mass Effect 2, you have to be very diplomatic in how you go about things, and you have to make some really tough choices, some choices that you won't want to make, but if you want certain outcomes, you're going to have to make certain sacrifices. Yeah. And also the combat was really polished. In Mass Effect 1, the combat was something that you tolerated to get to story point and have those the conversations were so like interesting and intriguing, and you enjoyed making and the combat was just a means to an end. It was kind of janky, it was just whatever. But in Mass Effect 2, they kind of like locked in on how this cover-based shooting could really work, and it really felt like the shooting aspect really felt like an action RPG. And so everything felt good in Mass Effect 2. You know, the dialogue trees, the conversations, all that stuff was great. And the combat was also great. And so it was the thing where you had all these things coming together. And now I will say this is a bit unfair as to one of the reasons why I prefer 2 to 1 or 3. But that is because 1 didn't have a chance. But I think the way that Mass Effect 2 played into your past relationships with everybody, and I really like the way that it revealed your companions to you as you kind of go on the search for companions. I thought it was a really clever way to have you go, like, some of these people you're chasing down, you don't even realize are people that you already know. I don't know. I just like the way that they handle all of it. So Mass Effect 1 I love Mass Effect 1, and it was an incredible proof of concept. Mass Effect 2, they got everything locked in, and kind of everything was perfected. You still had the storytelling prowess, and you had the excellent, especially for an RPG, an action RPG, you had an excellent gunplay to go along with it. And then in 3, unfortunately, they just kind of oversimplified some things, and they dropped the ball in the ending. So for me, Mass Effect, absolute favorite series, and Mass Effect 2 is the crown jewel of that trilogy.
And I obviously agree with you. And the only other thing I would say is, at which you kind of already alluded to, was the level of interaction and bonding that you either had or didn't have with your companions was a huge part to me. It made it feel real. It made me feel like I knew these people. I love the fact that most of these people didn't get along with 1 or 2 or 3 of the other ones, and having to deal with that. That was like one of my favorite things. And it also was, there were times I was just like, man, come on, just, one time, just go with the team one time.
Well, and I guess one thing that was also a pro, speaking of the people and the relationships, one thing that was a pro in Mass Effect 2 is, regardless of your decisions that you made in Mass Effect 1, no spoilers, but regardless of your decisions made in Mass Effect 1, space racist Ashley Williams you didn't have to have her as part of your crew in Mass Effect.
Thank you for calling her that, because I was like, could they have come up with a more racist person than her? I mean, other than what's his name, Jeffries or whatever, that was the XO on the first Normandy.
I hated her so much. So Mass Effect
1,
my
God.
there's like I would always be like, oh, this is how I did it the first time, but let me make some different decisions, and I never could. I'm like, I'm sorry, nope, you're the one going on the suicide mission, Ashley.
Yeah,
like, take
every
your space
replay.
racism elsewhere.
Well, every replay though, like even on the first game, I'm like, every time I saw Caden walking past Caden Alenko in the hall or in his station, I'm like, don't worry, buddy, you're gonna get to live.
Yeah, I'd rather have Caden and his headaches than than Ashley and her superiority roaming around. So yeah, that is, I think, definitively Mass Effect 2 is the best of the Mass Effect series. And again, any viewers watching, if you have any particular feelings, let us know your particular favorite entry of your favorite franchise. But okay,
unless you've been Andromeda. So okay, on my turn, you like how I snuck that in there?
Yes. Nobody liked Andromeda.
I decided to go super controversial and probably one of the most difficult franchises to pick the favorite out of. And that is the Assassin's Creed franchise.
Ooh.
And here's the thing, and it's
well, actually, this is not hard for me. This is not.
I know that. I know that, and 99% of the world is, dude, if the game doesn't have Ezio in it, it's not one of the best ones. Which, here's a hot take for you: I hate the Ezio games, all of them.
That is
anyway.
Hot take.
Yeah, so just get it out of your head now. I'm not gonna say one of the Ezio.
Oh, I know. Well, that's not my favorite either.
Oh, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah,
So here we have this is where I run into, and I'm gonna get it to the one, but here's where I have such a hard time. Ancient Egypt's probably one of my favorite. I'm a history person, degrees in history, love history. Ancient Egypt is probably one of my favorite settings because there's so much there we still don't know. We guess at it. I love hearing all these experts and archaeologists just making these claims. I'm like, you have no idea what they were thinking or what they were doing. So you got that. Then you got the fact that literature, from a literature standpoint, I love Victorian England. I love Jack the Ripper and Peaky Blinders and Sherlock Holmes and Dorian Gray and The Invisible Man and Nemo and all that stuff that involves around Syndicate. That being said, my favorite one is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
And I think that would also be the consensus among most people.
Because at its heart, it is a pirate simulator. Yes, Assassin's Creed's there. It's very much there. Anytime you're not on your boat, it is Assassin's Creed. But when you are on your boat, it's every pirate story you've ever, Treasure Island, all the real life pirates, Edward Teach, all of them.
Blackbeard,
Pirates of the Caribbean. You're getting all those favorite stories you grew up reading or hearing about, and you're on this boat, and they make you controlling that boat feel so visceral. You got that stern, and you're broadsiding people, and you're hitting them with chain shot, and you're trying to run out the guns, and you're trying to drop, the flame barrels or the fire barrels and get that to land. I mean, it's intense at its most, lightest moments on the water. It's still very intense. Running up that bounty so that you eventually start getting chased by, hunters. So without a doubt. And also I thought Edward Kenway was an engaging character.
Well, and also not an assassin. Like
not an assassin.
I think that might be the only Assassin's Creed game where you actually do not play as someone that is part of the assassins.
He's an absolute imposter for the majority of the game.
Literally steals an assassin's clothes and masquerades as him.
So anyway, loved that game. Loved every aspect of it. And it's sad because there are other games out there that, in that franchise, it makes it very, very tough. But I love the Crusades. So the first one is still, near and dear to my heart. And I love Ancient Greece. So, and I love Dark Ages England. But here we are.
I still don't think that there'll ever be anything quite like the first game before any of us knew what we were getting into with Assassin's Creed, where it starts you off and it has you walk off to the edge of the cliff and it just tells you to jump. Just tells you to, and you, for the first time, you do the whole thing where you flip over and you fall into the hay. I don't think anything will ever quite recapture that moment of like, oh my god, oh wow, like oh no, it was just cool.
It
And
also
now it's
helped
just
that they had the Absolute Smoke Show, Jade Raymond, marketing that game back then. I was like, "Yep, I'll buy it."
yeah, certainly did not do it a disservice. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah, and I would agree. Yeah, Black Flag was hands down my favorite. It just that was one where not only was it kind of everything that they had been doing up to that point, like that was
Yeah.
like kind of like Mass Effect 2, like it perfected those. It also has things that were in that haven't been either replicated or tried since. So like the songs, like whenever you'd go in the cities and you'd see the little pages that would fly and you'd have to chase the pages and you'd grab them, and then those would be the songs that they'd be rowing to.
Especially when you picked up the shanty whiskey in a jar and you're like, where have I heard this before?
Chanty, that's the
word.
Where
have I heard
this
before? Where have I heard? And then you realize it's the one that the Metallica turned into an actual song. So
that's also one that there's so many Assassin's Creed games where you can fast travel. I don't think I ever fast traveled once in Black Flag. No. You have the option to fast travel, but you're like, why would I? You're like, no, I'm just gonna take the boat. I'm gonna listen to the sea shanties, and we're just gonna row all the way there. And it's still, even though I've been a huge fan of so many entries in the Assassin's Creed franchise, that's the only one where I ever felt like drawn and compelled to do everything. I wanted to do it all. And I wanted to collect every suit. Like there's a suit of armor that's locked away in your mansion that you have access to, that you have to get these certain stones to get. I got that. And then they had at the corners of the map, they had the different sea ships or ghost ships that you would go and combat. That's another thing is the sea combat was absolutely like addictive on that. It was so fun. It was so easy. It was very fluid. Like it didn't take
the weather. Yeah, on the sea played its own character, man.
And
Rogue
again,
Waves.
it is not confirmed, but it is heavily rumored and all but confirmed that we are getting a Black Flag remake. And I can't wait for it. And what I also hope is that whenever we get this Black Flag remake, that maybe that finally gets us the sequel, whether direct or spiritual, to Black Flag to continue, because I won't waste our time with it again. But this was still one of the biggest blunders of all time, of literally asking the fans a direct question, getting a direct answer, and still somehow misinterpreting that. And that was with the unprecedented success of Black Flag. They sent out a questionnaire. Ubisoft did. They sent out a questionnaire asking fans, would you like a pirate game that existed outside of the Assassins franchise? And we were all like, yes, just give me this. Give me swashbuckling. Give me exactly this. And just forget about the Animus. I don't care about any of that stuff. Just let me be pirate. Let me do pirate things, and let's have more pirate stories. And they said, okay. And instead we got, what was that game called? That
Skull and Bones.
Skull and Bones.
You don't even know the name. That's how bad it is.
we got Skull and Bones instead. So they're like, oh, awesome. Well, we'll give you more of the boats. And they focused an entire game on the boat mechanic. And it was even though it was a game focused on the boat mechanics, it was still somehow an inferior version of the boat mechanics. But we didn't want just boat mechanics. We wanted to be a pirate. We wanted to have the sword fights on the sails. I don't know. It's still, so I'm not going to get into it, but again, it's one of the biggest blunders ever. I love that game.
All right. Well, it's your turn. We each get one more.
Well, I was really struggling. I don't really have another one. I know you had two, and I've been thinking about so many entries, and the only thing I can think of, because like I one of my second favorite franchises of all time is the Uncharted franchise. Love the Uncharted franchise, but if I had to, I would probably say 3 from Uncharted, but I don't want to go down that road. So what I'm going to do, I will say that I'm going to go on the Need for Speed franchise. And my favorite entry there, it's since been remade.
Wow.
But that is Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. That is just the purest form of how I play. I don't play a lot of racing games. I've never been a big racing game guy, but that was one where it's just what I loved it, where you would just go down the road until a cop spotted you and chased you, and then you would just see how many cops you could lose. You start to get choppers on you, stuff like that. So I'm gonna go with that one. I'm gonna go with the Need for Speed franchise, which has obviously had ups and downs, more downs recently than ups. But the Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the first one, and then the remake, I'm gonna go with that simply because I can't pick a favorite on some of these other franchises just yet. But so as a boring pick, I'm gonna say Need for Speed Hot Pursuit for the Need for Speed franchise.
Well, and that's a good one, man. I'm not going to argue with that either. I was more of a fan of the Underground than I was Hot Pursuit, but I spent my time trying to get out on the interstate in Hot Pursuit and try to get as fast and far away as possible.
And see, I spent more time in Underground, but even then, even though obviously the options available to you on the Underground series were obviously far crazier. You could customize your vehicle, and obviously the graphics were better. And I would say that is a better game. I would say that's a better game. But there's just something about the feeling of Hot Pursuit was the first one where that was kind of the point of the game, was outrunning the cops. And so I don't know. There's just something about that nostalgia and finally being served to racing games, but outrunning cops, that I could have some fun with. And so there was something about that where that was the point, was dealing with the cops. I just loved it.
All right. Well, mine was a toss up on my last one, and I've been sitting here trying to think which one I was going to go with. And initially, I was going to go with Metal Gear, since we had the new release of
that'd be hard to choose a favorite.
Metal Gear Delta came out or whatever. And if you had to know, I'm not going to use this one, but my favorite one was Metal Gear Solid, the first one, the Shadow Moses incident. I thought it was the most epic one, but the one I'm going to go with is Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell. And my favorite in the franchise was Chaos Theory, which was the third entry after Splinter Cell, Pandora Tomorrow. We had Chaos Theory. And why am I going with Chaos Theory? Well, first off, you had a very Tom Clancy-esque plot where you had North Korea and South Korea and Japan and China all involved in this possible split up that was going to lead to World War, III, and Sam having to do a globe trot around the world to get all these people together to get this thing resolved. And I don't want to spoil it in case anybody wants to play it. Although if you do play it, it'll be probably on an emulator at this point. But it showcased Sam in a way that we saw the freshman effort in the first game, which was great. But it had some jank when you did your parkour, and it wasn't as fluid. Assassin's Creed went through the same growing pains. And then Pandora Tomorrow, the second game, made it a little more smooth, but we needed some more feature sets. And then we get to Chaos Theory, where you can do the thing where you do a split on the walls above the ceiling, and you could drop down and break a neck or whatever. So I think we had the full package of Sam's lethality in Chaos Theory. That's when he was at his peak. The other piece about that was they had perfected Spies versus Mercs at that point. And I had so much fun. I was living in Florida at the time, and I had so much fun with the 4 or 5 buddies I had, because I think it was 3-on-2 when you did Spies versus Mercs. And we absolutely just enjoyed the shit out of playing a session of that. And there was never an argument about who was going to be a spy and who was going to be a merc. We traded off here and there, and definite perks and cons to either one, because, as a spy, you basically had no weapons. And as a merc, you had an assault rifle, and also, hey, you had an motion detector. So
and it was first person.
And it was first person.
Mercenaries were first person, spies were third person.
Yes. So it was a very unique multiplayer setup that we still have not seen.
I was
to
gonna say, I'm
this day.
still shocked that nobody else stole it. Usually, you'll
No.
see people like shamelessly steal something super successful like that, and somehow
Nobody has.
it never got stolen.
I mean,
Which is kind of unfortunate.
It's crazy because you look at games like Hitman, the newest one, and you're like, they totally could have done a Spies versus Mercs type mode on this. It would have been easy.
Hey, maybe when we get that 007 game, maybe they'll give it to us.
Maybe. But anyway, really loved Chaos Theory. I'm looking forward to whatever Splinter Cell has planned in the future. And of course, Michael Ironsides as the voice of Sam Fisher was lights out. So anyway, that was mine. But, you know, for anybody watching this show too, I know the franchises we mentioned were a little bit older, a little bit dated. And we've got franchises that aren't traditional franchises anymore. You look at like Dark Souls, and you just group all those games together from Demon Souls to Elden Ring, and you could pick a favorite of that franchise if you wanted, because technically those games are all linked, even up to, you know, Bloodborne. But you know, we're entering an age where I think franchises are going to see a different evolution.
Well, yeah, and so many of these franchises that are being brought back, it's one of those things where they've been franchises for so long that, you know, most of the people that they need to advertise to may not have played the first or, you know, or if any of them in that. For like whenever they release Splinter Cell, like if we get another Splinter Cell game, they're basically gonna have to either reboot it or make a prequel, or do some sort of thing where they do a lot of exposition within it. So they basically, so many of these franchises, when they do other entries, they're going to have to make them as not just something to make fans like us happy, but also be an on-ramp to new players, because the gap has been so wide since the previous entry.
I tell you, you know, you're going to laugh, but I think a great Splinter Cell sequel right now would just open in a dark, seedy bar with Sam sitting there with a cigar and a glass of bourbon and a reporter, and he's old, and it's Michael Ironsides. And he's like, you know, he's wanting to basically get all the information out there of all the stuff he's done before he you know, shakes off his mortal coil. And it's just a series of flashbacks that technically are a prequel. And then
like,
that way
an anthology where it's just like a whole bunch of disparate stories.
Yes.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And you wouldn't need, he's like, you know, let me tell you about the summer of 78. And you go back, and he wouldn't need Ironsides for that. You could use a younger kid that maybe has a voice that you think would sound like Ironsides later in life. And just do it that way through a series of flashbacks. And then you could even touch inside of the plots of all the games that we already love without actually affecting those plots at all.
Well, and there, every once in a while, I'll see pictures pop up on social media or something like that, and I'll see somebody that's gone to one of these, you know, cons or whatever, and they'll have their picture taken with Michael Ironsides, and I'll be like, we need to get that Splinter Cell game made before we no longer have access to this guy.
Right? Yeah. I saw him on Collider Talk or whatever, and I was like, oh shit, do we need to get
we need to get moving on this game, guys. Let's get some dialogue in the can, because
I'm not taking him in the pool or nothing, but still.
Yeah, because he ain't getting younger. He
ain't playing Jester on Top Gun, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, no. So it's like let's get some of those banked up. Let's just get some dialogue banked up, and let's get moving on that. How about it?
Yeah. But anyway, man, that's all I had for tonight. And I just wanted to share that. And I thought that was, you know, a good little topic, because we always talk about the new things coming out. And it's important to look back on where we came from.
Well, and, you know, we always get really positive feedback whenever we do like those sort of like retro look backs and stuff like that. And and again, I will say we'll do more of those kinds of things, like the casualty lists and stuff like that. We want to do bigger, better. You know, we've done a lot of improving in just the last few months, and so we want to give those we you know, even do those even more justice whenever we go into those. So we're still working on some ways of doing that. But yeah, we love reminiscing on the older games and stuff that we love, and especially whenever we look at how they've influenced what we have today. And so, yeah, more of that to come. No worries. And let us know anything that you guys want to talk about, want to hear our opinions on, or any suggestions you have to improve the show. Let us know. I will say that where is my banner here? Just because I haven't yet, and just let you know that you can.
I owe myself $10.
Yeah, you can get 15% off your entire order at comfort.com/hardcore for comfort clothing, hoodies, sweats, all of those things. Fantastic quality. They feel like a blanket. They are not the typical hoodie material that you get. But yes, I'm not wearing mine now because we are in triple digits in Texas. But yes, I have plenty of comfort clothing. And again, you can get yours at comfort.com/hardcore. Helps us out and keeps you warm. So there we go. That is the last thing that I have to say. Do you have anything in closing, Jay?
I do not, man. It's been a wonderful show, though, and I've enjoyed it. So
me as well. And thank you guys for joining us, and do a little corporate speak, and we'll give you 5 minutes back in your evening, and we will call it a night. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Thank y'all.